That having been said, I've filled enough time. Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher, joining us here on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. Great to talk with you today.
Great to talk to you. Where do we begin? I mean, we just had a congressman carjacked last night. It's amazing.
Yeah, this place it really has changed, even the amount of time that I have been here. This is 5 coming up on 6 years. And the environment has gotten increasingly more violent. The prosecutions here, the law enforcement here on Capitol Hill and the surrounding area, the district in particular, is very, very lax. And we all sense it. I think all of us are trying to take some more steps in safety. You know, most of us live away from our offices. A lot of people do live in the offices. I'm not one of them. And when you're coming to and from or going to meetings of any sort, you need to be very aware of your surroundings, because I know Henry Cuellar pretty well. He's the one who got carjacked last night. I haven't spoken to him. He sent out a message. He's okay and all that, but it can happen to anybody. And he was in a very nice area, Kevin. I mean, a lot of members live in what's called the Navy Yard area. They've got apartments down there, and it's very nice. It's been renovated, and so for that to happen there is a sign of what it's really like around the District of Columbia.
Scary times, indeed. Congressman, take us through the last 72 hours and your vote on the big spending bill.
Well, so you know the overall scenario, Kevin. We've had a real fight over the debt crisis the month of September, which ironically happens every year about the same time. But that's our fiscal year end. And that's when things typically come to a head when it comes to budgeting. Right now, things are more urgent, I think, than they've ever been before. That's because of the $33 trillion debt level. People are concerned about that. And so that's where the debt fights typically take place. What we've been doing is many of the Republicans have put a stake in the ground here and said, okay, we've got to do something about this. And so what we did is we took the border security issue as our key issue. You have to have a legislative vehicle when you take a fiscal stand like this. We said, okay, we're gonna say H.R. 2, which is the border security bill, has got to be passed by the Senate and sent to the White House for the House Republicans to sign off on budget type things. And you know, that was pretty uniform. I think everybody, at least on the Republican side, see the problem with the border. A lot of the Democrats still are pushing back on that, but we think we've got the majority and the leverage to do it. So we came up with our budget, if you will, and our numbers, and we set them at pre-COVID levels, which is a significant cut because COVID took spending very high. And then we hung all of those numbers around the border security issue as the legislative tool. And we had what I thought was a good package. And yes, it was a continuing resolution, but you have to use that as a tool when you have the right leverage, or it's to your advantage to do that. So we had lower spending. We had the border security. We had taken the Ukraine money out because that's been very controversial. We repealed that out of the vote for a separate vote. And we held the mandatory things, Social Security, Medicare, defense, and our veterans whole. So we didn't take any cuts there. But everything else got about a 25 to 30% reduction, which is huge for this town. It hasn't happened in my lifetime, or at least certainly since I've had any involvement here. Well, I supported that, and it came up a little bit short. And just a handful of Republicans and the Democrats killed that. Ironically, one of the Republicans that did was Matt Gaetz, who voted against it. Well, that threw us into a whole other scenario, and we wound up passing the Democrat version, which had no cuts at all, still had some Ukraine money in it, didn't do anything for the border, no reductions. And so I did not support that. And but that's what passed. That was a bipartisan bill. That's what passed. That takes us to November 17th. And the Senate has done nothing in the meantime. They did agree to that second bill, and the president signed it, so we got a stopgap till November 17th. So the fight's going to pick up again. It's picking up again now. But that's in a nutshell what happened. And if I'm gonna be voting on appropriations bills, they've got to be cut. And I think most of the Republicans are that way. We still have some issues within our own conference to resolve, obviously.
Congressman Russ Fulcher joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, Congressman, what is that like? Because you've got Matt Gaetz going on all the big shows. You're close to the speaker. You've got all these issues going on. So for members of the caucus, where do you go? And now the movement, they put the hit on to remove the speaker. How will that play out?
Well, I know both, and that's one of the frustrating things because, we have a majority in the House, but it's a very, very slim majority. So anytime there's a rift, it's very, very impactful. And one of the most frustrating things about this is it's a huge distraction right now. I mean, we just passed this, in my opinion, bad stopgap, spending stopgap to go 45 days to do all the rest of the appropriations, which is it takes a lot of time and it's complicated. And instead of focusing on that, we're going to be doing this motion to vacate. So Matt stood up last night. He gave notice. You have to do 2 days notice before you can actually do it. So he gave notice last night. So within 2 days, we're going to be having this vote and debate over the speaker. And frankly, I disagree with him on that. He's had an axe to grind with Kevin for a long time, and they're both probably in the wrong, as usually is the case when it comes to personality conflicts like this. But this is not the time to play it out. We've got so many other things that are on the docket that we need to be dealing with first. But nevertheless, we're going to be dealing with that. I don't think there are the votes to remove the speaker at this point. However, you don't need many, because the Democrats, of course, will support it. And if there's just, 4 or 5 Republicans, and there it is. And so it's always possible. But then comes the next question, okay, who? And I'm just telling you, there is no one in the Republican conference that has, or the Democrat conference for that matter, that has support for 218 different votes. I mean, we went 15 rounds last time for this to play out, and so this is going to take some time. It is possible, of course, that he would be removed, and then we go through the process. Okay, then who? And there is no clear person to follow up. And honestly, there's not a long list of people who really want to do this. This is a very difficult job, and so. I think it's very unfortunate that we're going through this process right now, but that's what's happening. Within a couple of days, we'll make the vote. There'll be all the debate, all the drama. Of course, the Democrats love it. The media loves it. But we shouldn't be doing this right now. We've got too many other things to do.
Our great friend Congressman Fulcher joining us. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. What do you make of the congressman who pulled the fire alarm? What happened? What was going on in your mind when that happened?
Oh, my. Oh, Kevin, you can't make some of this stuff up. I was actually, this thing went off when I was headed to vote, and I was in, there's an underground walkway here. There's multiple paths you can take from the office buildings to the House floor or the Senate floor for that matter. And I was in one of the underground walkways when this thing off, and it's just a screeching alarm, and you don't know for sure, right? Of course, it's a fire alarm, but you don't know if it's used for other emergencies or what. But anyway, this screeching alarm goes off, and I actually had a set of AirPods that I use for hands-free talking, and I stuck those in my ears just to kind of blunt the noise. And it wasn't until I got to the floor where, by the time I got to the floor, people already knew who had done it. I mean, this was almost instantaneous. And so, it was apparently it's Congressman Bowman, and he said that this was there was a door blocked, and so he wanted to delay the vote or whatever. Hit the wrong. I don't know, but it's interesting though. The Democrat side had just made a motion to adjourn, so they were trying to stall the floor vote when he pulled that alarm. And so one has to wonder: was this part of a stall tactic, or was he just inept? I don't know the answer to that. It's embarrassing. I think anytime this kind of stuff goes on, and it's happening in Congress, and it's not only in Congress, but it's by members of Congress, I just kind of cringe and go, "Oh my, we don't need this." But it's some of the folks find it amusing, and so here we are.
Here we are indeed. Our great friend, Congressman Russ Fulcher, joining us. Kevin Mill in the morning. Let me ask you, Congressman, we never want to assume, do you have time for another segment?
Happy to do it, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. In the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher, joining us here. Congressman, obviously you have offices all over the district. I always like learning from you. You've been in Idaho for many, many generations. Do you get different vibes from every region when you go to? Do you get different reports from your different field offices? And sounds like a naive question, but a lot of us just stay in the Treasure Valley and we think that's Idaho.
That's a pretty good question, actually, because there are some trends. Typically, you've got the top line issues, and it's inflation, has to do with gas prices, grocery prices, has to do with concerns over the what people in Idaho think is a two-tiered justice system, the Hunter Biden stuff versus the Trump persecution, prosecution, all that. Those are kind of the top line, and that's across the state. And I see that all over the state. Then it starts peeling off into secondary, not really secondary in terms of importance necessarily, but there's just in terms of categorizing, there's a second level of issues, and it has to do with the geography or some of the more local things that are happening right there. For example, in the greater Boise area, the upcoming issue with the merger between Albertsons and Kroger. That is one of the things that comes up. In the northern part of the state, more rural areas, there's the issue of the Second Amendment, this bill coming up that condemns the actions of Governor New Mexico for subverting Second Amendment rights. And then I've got a bill that's about to go front and center that would remove the federal government funding for any of the 30 by 30 initiative, which is the president's initiative to basically tie up a lot of land in the West. And so those get a lot of attention from the northern part of the state. So you get that top tier where it's pretty uniform, and I would say from what I see across the country when it comes to inflation and then some of the issues with justice or lack thereof, then it starts to regionalize a little bit.
Going on energy, obviously, gas prices continue to go up, sir.
It's pretty simple. If we do it here, and we do it plentiful, we do it on a large scale like we're capable of, like we were doing 2 years ago, the prices drop, and our international situation gets better because we're exporting to our friends, and we're removing dependence that our friends have on our enemies. We're moving our dependence from ourselves, or our enemies to ourselves. That solves a lot of problems. Energy is kind of one of those, well, not kind of one of, it is the issue that is kind of your baseline economic issue. If your energy sector is strong, if you're producing, if you're exporting, that impacts so many other industries and has such a tremendous impact on your overall economic strength. And so that's critical. And this administration has taken this ideological bent that somehow energy production, somehow fossil fuels, somehow domestic control of that and export and sale of that is a bad thing. And that just magically we want to make every car, every vehicle a battery vehicle without even the foresight to see that, well, okay, let's just pretend for a moment that were the case. Where are we going to get the power to charge the batteries? I mean it's that it's that silly because this strategy hasn't been thought out. So doing this stuff through the congressional channels is always slow. It's always a struggle. And that's why presidents like to do executive orders, because they circumvent congressional channels. But in this case, we're having to reverse these executive orders by taking legislative action. And so that's what we're attempting to do, to put these things statutorily in place to strengthen our energy sector and put us back on the right track economically.
Well, and that is the challenge with the grid. And, Congressman Fulcher on KIDO Talk Radio, can you just, for us folks here in Idaho, can you just tell us how out of whack the president is? I mean, you take a look at when it comes to energy, something that impacts all of us. I mean, look at the UAW situation, sir. He's there at the picket lines with the people that he's going to put out of business because he's promoting EV vehicles. He's pushing it on us.
There is no cohesive policy. There's no cohesive strategy, Kevin. As I mentioned before, he comes out with this objective, that by a certain date we're supposed to have, the majority of automobiles in America, for example, that are transitioned over to EVs or electric vehicles. Well, that may sound good on a top line, but the ramifications of that are astronomical. So to your point, here he is picketing out there with the automobile union, and he's the one who caused or to a large extent caused the problems that they're picketing over with these policies, because you take these EVs and a huge percentage of your auto worker jobs go away.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you're going to be buying them from other countries, and secondly, they just don't have the number of components and all that the fossil fuel cars do. And then the underlying lack of strategy that comes with it. Okay, so let's say we have all of these electronic vehicles. Where's the energy source in order to power them? We don't have it now. We don't have the plug-in stations or the charging stations across the country. We've got an infrastructure for fossil fuel, and there is no cohesive energy policy. And so the president is not supporting fossil fuels. He's trying to do everything he can to get rid of that. Coal is included as part of that. Does not support any kind of nuclear. I would argue doesn't support even wind and solar when it comes right down to it, because you have to mine, you have to generate the critical minerals to create the components for your wind and your solar, and he doesn't want any of that done in the U.S., and so that needs to come from China or Ukraine or whatever, Russia. Even hydro. No, we don't want hydro because that might harm some fish. Might underscore, right? And so there is no cohesive energy strategy. It wasn't until I had a full majority in the House before I even got a geothermal bill passed through the House, and it still hasn't got through the Senate. And that's all that does is say you can search for geothermal energy on federal lands, and so there is no energy policy by this president, and there is no energy policy by his administration. And as a function of that base economic structure that influences so many other industries and has so much influence on our foreign policy all over the globe is weak. We're paying more at the pump as a result. We're paying more for our power bill as a result. And there's just no reason. This is self-inflicted, Kevin. It's all Washington, D.C., and a big percentage of it's coming out of the White House. So this is a self-inflicted, very serious wound.
A couple more quick ones for Congressman Fulcher. We appreciate his weekly review with us here, his reports from Washington on KIDO Talk Radio. Wall Street Journal did a big piece on Driggs, Idaho, becoming the new Jackson Hole. And just like most of our beloved state here, Congressman Fulcher, big money coming in, $1 million homes. Any thoughts on that, on Driggs, Idaho, at one time just this undiscovered territory, undiscovered little town? Now, all of a sudden, just these mansions coming in. Let me see. I'll break this down for you. Here you go. Let's see. It's costing about $1 to $3 million to buy and build homes there now.
Kevin, I think you were the first person, other than me and maybe one or two others that in private settings and town hall settings or something like that. I think you were the first person years ago who started raising the issue of how do we keep Idaho, Idaho? I mean, when
Right.
before the big boom had started happening and there was droves of people coming in, and you were the one who was out there publicly saying, how do we keep Idaho, Idaho with this just tremendous shift, this influx of people? And you saw that coming, and it's had a very significant impact. And Driggs is located, as you know, just across the way from Jackson Hole, and it's a Sun Valley-ish like feel, and it's beautiful, and it's a fabulous place to visit, and the recreational opportunities, and I still don't fully understand why, but those regions often draw a very, very liberal mindset, and so as long as a tremendous amount of money, and it's the economic benefit is quite significant. But it also has some drawbacks if you don't manage it right. If you don't take some steps for your property tax payers who've been there for years and years and years, and provide some vehicles for them to be insulated a little bit, and you've got some real problems, because only the very, very wealthy can live and buy and stay, even and penalize those who've been there for decades. So this is a local government challenge, probably more so than a federal challenge, and my heart's out to my local colleagues in local government, state government, because that impacts them probably more directly. But for all of us, the culture of our state is being challenged, and so I don't know if this is the right or the best answer. But what I do every time I meet with a group of people is I say, "How many of you have come to Idaho in the last couple of years, or whatever?" And I always get a bunch of hands, and I say, "Okay, welcome to Idaho. Welcome to my family's home for over 100 years. Now, don't forget why you came here, because you're coming to something and you left something that's better than where you were, and help us keep it this way. That means we like our families here. We like our traditional values here. And so don't bring the system that you are leaving to Idaho when you come." And I have to say, most of the people that I talk to, they're coming for the right reasons, but we have to raise that visibility, and it's a challenge to keep the culture of Idaho, the culture of Idaho, over the long term when you have this kind of growth.
And finally, you'll love this one. The LA Times spending time in Idaho doing an expose on the dam situation and the battle to keep the dams, to get rid of the dams. An extensive piece. A couple of they sent like 3 or 4 reporters here. Just your thoughts on the LA Times interested in our dam situation here in Idaho.
I wasn't aware of it, but I am not shocked. And here's the thing: is it sounds so good, right? We're going to remove the dams. We're going to save the fish. First of all, there is the situation with our fish flow, salmon flow, is much more complicated than with dams or no dams. You can take a look at parallel river systems where in one there are dams and in one there are no dams. You can compare the fish flow, and oftentimes it's the same or very, very, very little difference. You've got all kinds of runoff issues, predatory issues, weather issues, you name it. And so it's great to say, you know what, we're just going to go back to the olden days. We're going to go back to early 1900s, pre these dams, and we're just going to take them out, and everything's going to be fine. Well, if you did that with these 5 lower snake dams like is being proposed, you're going to gut the economy of the Pacific Northwest, because it's all been centered around that. You've got your hydropower that comes through all of that, your flood control, your irrigation for your ag community, your transportation for the barging system from Lewiston all the way to the Pacific, of course, the recreational component, all that. You bypass that, then that guts, and the towns go away, cities go away. And no, you can't just write a check and have that replaced. In the meantime, you take your dependence away from say things like barging, and you put it on trucks, and so you defeat the purpose of your environmental impact in the process. It's just a flawed argument to do that, and the data, even if you did, the data does not say conclusively that it's going to restore the fish flow. So this is a problem, but it's so apropos that the LA Times, of all people, would take an interest in Idaho. If the LA Times shows up in Idaho for any reason, I would be suspect of that, because they're not here to do anything to benefit Idaho.
Congressman Fulcher, always defending Idaho. We appreciate the extended segment today. Thank you very much, and stay sane up there, sir.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Our great friend, Congressman Fulcher. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO.